بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Without a doubt, alaykum salam to Allah, it's 10:37 p.m. at night. Many brothers have left and are leaving. And alhamdulillah, there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas you've heard what I believe, and Allah Alam, more than enough from Abu Sajid, from Ali Davis, and Abu Abdul Razak. I'm sure they've given you more than enough of everything that you want and need to hear regarding this topic and other fawaid as well. However, I don't really have an option or choice but to speak, and my brothers will become very angry if I left without saying anything. So with that being said, stop the fitnah. I would say that before we even get into the concept of stopping the fitnah, we have to realize that the fitnah is not going to stop, because it's not meant to stop. It isn't meant to stop. It is the will of Allah Azza wa Jal, and it's His wisdom for there to be fitnah, for there to be a fatin, for there to be a maftoon, and for there to be an actual fitnah. That's Allah's wisdom. For there to be one igniting or perpetuating or starting the actual fitnah, for there to be someone who's maftoon, who's caught up in the fitnah, good or bad, right or wrong, aggressor or defender, but they're in the fitnah, and there's going to be a fitnah. So oftentimes, we subtly go against Allah's qadr with what we say and what we do. There's always going to be fitnah. This is proven by the Quran, this is proven by the authentic sunnah, and this is proven by the history of the human being. There's been fitnah from the offspring of Adam alayhi salam. There was murder. And the Prophet alayhi salam, he told us they were the first to start the sunnah of murder. And ever since the time of Cain and Abel, there's always been bloodshed up until this day. So there's always going to be fitnah. Alright? So with that being said, the Prophet ﷺ, as an example of this, he tells us, in the narration of, let's say, Abu Malik al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, well-known hadith in Sahih Muslim, in which he says, أَرْبَعٌ فِي أُمَّتِي مِنْ أُمُورِ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ لَا يَتْرُكُونَهُنَّ. He says there are four practices and four acts that have remained from the time of paganism, the era before we were Muslim, when the people lived in Mecca and they worshipped idols. Four things that are from the practices of Jahiliyyah, fi ummati, and they are present and prevalent in my nation, and they will not leave them alone. The Prophet himself is saying that there are certain things that his followers will not cease doing. What are those four things? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, al-fakhru bil-ahsab. First and foremost is being proud, or having pride in one's background, one's genealogy. I'm the son of so-and-so. I come from the tribe of such and such. My father was a scholar. My father was a warrior. My father, my blood, my race, my country. وَالطَّعْنُ fil ansab. Number two, he said, and is doing the exact opposite. Instead of taking pride in yourself and your own background, it is disrespecting and debasing others. Your father was a coward. Your father was this. Your tribe is that. Your race, your lineage, your country, etc. Number three, the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, Al-fakhru bil-ansab, al-fakhru bil-ahsabi, wa-ta'nu fil-ansab. Towards the end of the hadith, because we don't want to get into the entire hadith right now. And the point is that the Prophet said four things that the Muslims will continue to do. And he said this during a time in which there was nothing more than light, and nothing more than ilm, and nothing more than taqwa and piety, the time of the Sahaba. So if that's what the Prophet said 1400 years ago, then what do you think is going to be today? And Allah Azza wa Jal, He made different types of creatures for different purposes. As He mentions in the Quran, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى بَطْنِهِ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى رِجْلَيْنِ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى أَرْبَعٍ يَخْلُقُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ. Allah says, from His created beings are those who crawl upon their bellies, and others walk on two legs, and others walk upon four. And Allah creates that which He wants to create, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's say one of those creatures, let's take about an insect, such as the dung beetle, or African dung beetle. It lives, it thrives, it reproduces upon what? Filth. Excrement. That is its food. That is its fuel. That is how they produce more beetles, through filth. And that's how Allah Azza wa Jalla created that insect. And He made that insect to be. So there's certain creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are always going to be parasitic. They're always going to feed off of filth and fitna. And there's some of us, unfortunately, and I'm not talking about nobody specifically. I'm not talking about anyone specifically. There's some of us, I said, some of us, that we make our living, we live, we survive, and we thrive off of this type of filth. Starting fitna, causing fitna, talking about people, praising people, and the list goes on. So if you think that a lecture, if you think that a seminar or a conference, if you think there's going to be a book, if you think there's going to be a sheikh or a scholar that's just going to say something and it's just going to go away and vanish, and everyone's going to be peaceful and happy and get along, then you're living in a total dream world. And obviously if you're dreaming, then it must mean that you're asleep. And if you're asleep, you have to be woken up. So don't think that it's just going to go away. Okay? As many brothers do, and as many brothers have. Please, they asked us, they begged us. We were in the Prophet's city. Please get us a fatwa, they said. Get us, please talk to Sheikh Fulan. Can you get Sheikh Fulan to speak? Ask us. They said we need something to stand on. Even if it's just one scholar, we need something to stand on to allow us to stand up in front of these people. That's what they said. Thinking that if they got a statement of a scholar or a sheikh, that all the fitna would just die down and go away. You're living in a dream world. And that's because that dung beetle's life and existence is based off of that ball of excrement. And if you take it away, it can't live and it can't survive. So it has to fight and defend itself for its food. Everyone understand this? Whether it's a roller, a tunneler, or the different types of dung beetles. So that is its existence. So be mindful of that. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He clearly tells us in the Quran al-Kareem about how He made human beings and how He made jinn for the fire. وَلَقَدْ ذَرَأْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. Allah says we have made many human beings and jinns for the fire of hell. Why? How, oh Allah? How can you say this? That you've made your slaves and servants for the fire of hell. Allah says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. Because they have hearts with which they have no understanding. They don't think. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا. He says they have eyes with which they don't see. وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. And they have ears with which they do not listen. They can't hear. أُولَٰئِكَ, Allah says, these people, كَالْأَنْعَامِ. They're like animals. They're like livestock. بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. Rather, they're even more astray. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. They are the heedless people. And we ask Allah to protect us from this. And when we quote these ayats, or we say these, or make this tafsir, under any circumstance does it mean that we're pointing a finger and looking down upon someone. We ourselves ask Allah to protect us from this. From being people who feed and thrive off of fitna. And make their way just off of fitna. So the fitna is never ever going to go away. Rather, it's only going to become worse and worse and worse. There's going to be more ignorance. There's going to be more haste. There's going to be more greed for the dunya. And more thirst for power. So therefore, it's a basic means of survival. مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَذَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلَى مَا أَنْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ. Allah says Allah will never leave the believers just as things are peaceful. No, that's not Allah's hikmah. Until Allah makes clear the tayyib from the khabith. The khabith from the tayyib. The good from the bad from the good. The pure from the filth. That's the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions this in many, many ayat. That He puts people through trials and through tribulations. We've made each other, or we've made you fitna for each other. Atasbirun. Allah says, will you be patient? وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ بَصِيرًا. And your Lord sees everything, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going on and on and on, ayah after ayah, hadith after hadith, is that there will be fitna. Okay, so that's first and foremost. We have to get out of that mindset that the fitna is going to stop. We have to get out of that mindset that it's nothing more than a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a meeting. There's a misunderstanding. There's been a misunderstanding, brother fulan. We just want good. Nah, there's always going to be fitna no matter what. So don't ever forget that. But our responsibility is to try to minimize the fitna. Our responsibility is to put out and extinguish it, even if it's just temporarily. That's our responsibility, to try and to attempt. But Allah Azza wa Jal will for there to be fitna. Khairan inshallah. So with that being said, I want to pull out a piece of paper here, a pink paper. When I was driving, we were driving down, coming from New York City. I sat down and I thought about my life. And I thought about my city. And I thought about the brothers and the sisters here. And I thought about the conference or the talk, Stop the Fitnah. And I also thought about the flyer, bullying, backbiting, this, that, so on and so forth. So I sat back and I took my mind off of myself. And how would it look through the eyes of an outsider, of a foreigner, someone that's not from Philadelphia? Or the eyes of someone who isn't a student of knowledge or someone who didn't go overseas and study? How would it look? I have two brothers here. Let's say two brothers. I look at them. They look the same. They dress the same. He studied in Mecca. He studied in Medina. He has the same type of thobe. He has the same type of thobe. He teaches this book. He explains this book. He studied for a similar amount of time. What's the big difference between them? When I sit in his class and I listen to his lecture, I listen to his tapes, I don't hear nothing crazy and wacky. There's no off-the-wall, flying on carpet type of stuff. I hear the same stuff that I hear the others saying. What's the difference? What's the problem? What's the beef? Why is everybody fighting? Why is this one against that one and that one against this one? What is the problem? What is the issue? If someone was to ask the question, what do you have against Fulan? Or what do you have against this masjid and masjid Fulan? What is the defining issue in which you two guys cannot work together and be brothers? Or at least have respect for each other? Because there are different levels of working together. It doesn't mean that I have to be in your masjid every single day to support you. It doesn't mean that I have to do everything that you do. It doesn't mean that. Nor does it mean I have to see eye to eye on every issue. But for me to have a basic amount of respect for you. What is the problem? What are the ingredients behind the fitna that the brothers are trying to stop? So I began to sketch and to etch and sketch and put some things together and came up with the following points like these bubbles here. Basic and simple. Anybody can read them and understand them. What I want to do, inshallah ta'ala, is I want to read them out. I want you to think carefully, critically, and just think about something that happened this year, last week, 10 years, 15 years ago, and think if you can relate to it, inshallah ta'ala. So, what is the difference between Brother Fulan and Brother Alan? Weren't they all friends at one point in time? Didn't he teach him? Didn't he study with him? Didn't they go overseas together? Didn't their kids used to play? Why are they at each other's throats and necks right now? Why can't we listen to him, but we can listen to you? You're all cool back in the day. What's the problem? So before we even get into stopping the fitna, which we just said that you can't really do, nor is it wise to try to spend all of your time and effort to stop a fitna that is going to continue, you have to understand why. What is the problem? What's the beef? So first and foremost, the main points, I would say, is it's a tie between number one, a tie. It's either going to be scholars / people of innovations. We call to the scholars. We cling to the scholars. We quote from the scholars. We take from the scholars, and you guys don't, or they don't. This is one of the most important defining points for fitna. Why can't I study with such and such? Why can't I go to his masjid? He doesn't like the scholars. He doesn't sit with the scholars. He hasn't sit with the scholars. He doesn't quote the scholars. Or some of them, they'll say, he only quotes the old scholars. He doesn't quote the modern day scholars. Okay, no problem. Tight. Number two, the people of innovations. What's wrong with Brother Fulan? And inshallah, I'm going to try my best to keep my best Islamic etiquettes, inshallah. And not to mention anyone's name unless it's a necessity. Unless there is a necessity. I'm going to try my best to be on good behavior, inshallah. So, why can't I study with him and benefit from him? He studied overseas for all of these years. He graduated. There's no one who's going to deny the fact that he is extremely beneficial. Unless you're just a total hater. Just listen to him talk. It's clear he's a benefit. Why can't I study with him? Because he goes and he sits with the people of innovations. He cooperates with the people of innovations. He's friends with the people of innovations. He's buddies with the people of innovations. Tayyib. Moving forward. Point number 3. Why can't I study with Brother Fulan? He's just like you. You guys were all cool. You studied in the same school. You graduated during the same year. Why can't I study with him? Why can't I benefit from him? Why can't I support his masjid or his website? Because he has mistakes. There are mistakes that he made. In this lecture, he said this. In this audio cassette, he made that statement. He said this about this companion. He spoke about this one. He said this about this. Fulan and Fulan. He has mistakes. Number 4, not only does he have issues with the scholars, then not only does he sit with the people of innovations, not only does he make mistakes, but it's not from the way of the Salaf al-Salih to use the general proofs of the Quran and the Sunnah to do the things that Brother Fulan is doing. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, an example of this, He says, "Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal maw'idatil hasanah wajadilhum billati hi ahsan." Allah says, call to the way of your Lord, make dawah. So Brother Fulan, he understands is that as long as I have the knowledge, as long as I have the proper qualifications, as long as there aren't any conditions made upon me which are not against the Quran and the Sunnah, and that's a discussion in itself. Perhaps we'll mention that. Why can't I go and teach and guide them? And they're ignorant 9 to 5 Muslims who drive cabs. This is the dalil. This is what Allah says, what His Messenger says. That's not the understanding of what? Of the pious predecessors. Whereas one brother, he said, he has to have proof to give da'wah at that masjid. He has to establish the dalil that it's permissible to go to this masjid. That's what he said. He says, you don't have dalil to go there and teach. The Quran and Sunnah da'wah teaching, he says, that's not the proper dalil. Rather, there's something else. We have to have the understanding of the Salaf with regards to you giving a lecture in a place in which isn't like this and isn't like that. Tayyib, moving forward. So these are the main reasons behind the differences. If it wasn't for the fact of a scholar or this scholar or that scholar, if I wasn't supposedly have made this mistake, if I didn't go to other masjids and do lectures at other places, we would, at the end of the day, pretty much be the what? The same thing. The same thing. Where we come from, our background, our race, our lineage, our credentials are very similar. Everyone understand this? And one could possibly say we have more things in common than we have difference. Everyone understand this? But these are the critical points. You guys think this is reasonable or unreasonable? In most cases, right or wrong. There's no one saying Fulan's ignorant, he can't teach, he's a sinner, he's an evildoer, he's giving out bad information. They don't say that. These are the main points and they're most hardcore, crucial points that they use to create and to keep snowballing this fitnah. Everyone understand this? I know the brother for 20 years. The most beautiful brother I met, has the best character, but he doesn't sit with the scholars. Or he sits with people of innovations. Or he made a mistake in a lecture that he didn't recant and he didn't take back. Everyone understand this or not? Right. Before we move forward, this is the religious way of looking at it. As far as looking at it from a worldly aspect, then one can say that it comes down to one thing and one thing only. And that is monopoly. Monopoly. Control. We cannot allow this person to teach and to gain repute and to gain power and to have a voice and to have a platform and to have followers, and he is not in line with our agenda and with our program. You don't check in with Fulan. You don't visit the brothers. You haven't seen the brothers. We can add that to the list as well. In other words, it's not about Islam. It's not about Salafiyah, but it's about money. It's about lust. And it's about dunya. Now one can say, astaghfirullah, akhi, how can you say this? How can you say this about the brothers? I'm not speaking about nobody specifically. If the shoe fits, then wear it. How can you make these accusations against someone, so on and so forth? I'm not making any accusations. I'm going to say what the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ لِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ فِتْنَةٍ وَفِتْنَةُ أُمَّةِ الْمَالِ. He says every ummah has a major infatuation, a major fitna. And the fitna, which is most major for my nation, is that of money. And another narration, which is authentic, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that I have not left behind a fitna adarra ala ummati min an-nisa, that's worse than women. Now, this seems like a broad claim that you're making, that it's all about money, it's all about control, it's all about power. It seems like a broad claim, but it's one thing that doesn't lie. It's one thing that isn't biased, and one thing that doesn't make a mistake, and that is history. History. Look at history in this city, on the East Coast. Look at the people that were refuted. Why were they refuted? Why were they warned from? How did they become deviants? And I guarantee you're going to find these points, and I guarantee you're going to find the concept of control and power. Is that you have to be beneath us and under us. I can give you my own personal story, which I've shared with the brothers several times, which is a true story. And if you don't believe the story, then go back and what? Ask them and see if they'll say that it's a lie. I really understand this or not. So I want to focus on tonight, because we don't have time to get into all of these different points. First and foremost, before I get into my main topic, is oftentimes someone, he runs from something and he hides from something, or he wishes to destroy a thing, and he ends up becoming that thing. Or he ends up doing more harm than that which he ran from. And I will give a brief example of this without getting into my main topic, that of the scholars. They say, Fulan defamed the scholars. He disrespected the scholars. He has no respect for the scholars. He has belittled the scholars. And that's a serious claim right there. To say that a Muslim has no love and respect for all of the scholars of Islam, that's a serious claim that has to be proven. But not even getting into that right now. The point is that you yourself, through your thirst of greed, of power and control and lust, and your aggression and your oppression and your ignorance, you yourself have disrespected the scholars. And you yourself have caused the general 9-to-5 layman people not to trust the scholars and to think ill of them and to speak bad of them. How is this, you may say? We all know that in the early times of Islam, the time of the companions, they were fitnah. The companions, they fought physically. They differed verbally, and there were a few times which they came together and they fought each other because they wanted something. And each group and each party believed that they were upon the truth. So from the greatest of those fitnahs is the fitnah between those two great armies, that of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu ardah, and that of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu ta'ala anhu ardah, and other companions that were in those battles. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is quoted to have said, وَيْحَكِ يَا عَمَّارُ تَقْتُلُكَ الْفِيَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. He says, "Oh Ammar, woe to you." He said it to him out of pity. Woe to you. تَقْتُلُكَ الْفِيَةُ الْبَاغِيَةُ. He says that the side who are making those who are making the aggression, the side that initially is wrong, the side that's not doing the wrong thing, they're going to kill you. You'll be martyred by them. So many of the ulama of Islam, they say that this hadith clearly proves is that Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was right. He was right. And Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, despite his ijtihad, he's a companion, he's in Jannah, he was wrong. And he was not supposed to have fought Ali radiallahu anhu and those companions. Because of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that his group was baghiyah. Now, that's the main interpretation of the hadith. There's another interpretation of this hadith, which may not be correct, but it goes to prove the point that I'm trying to make right now. They said, the followers of Muawiyah, they said, we didn't kill Ammar. We didn't martyr Ammar. They said, rather, you killed Ammar. It was your fault. You caused the war. You refused to go after the murders of Uthman. You brought Ammar to the battlefield in front of our arrows and in front of our spears. So in actuality, antum al-fiyatul baghiyah. It says, you're the wrong group because you forced us to fight you. Now, the purpose of our talk is not to get into this historical event, nor to get into the fitnah any deeper than this. And as a disclaimer, as many people say, oh look, he's cursing the Sahaba. Ahl Sunnah la yakhuduna fil fitna allati jarat bayna Sahaba. That's not what the ulama mean when they say that we don't mention it. It's a part of history. If it wasn't mentioned, how would we know about it? They mean we don't idly talk about it and find fault in the companions and slander them. That's what's meant by that. But the actual seed of the story has to be mentioned and learned. So therefore, for someone to say that you're disrespecting the scholars, you're attacking the scholars, you're defaming the scholars, give the scholars some respect. These things come from you. Because I'm a 9-to-5 Muslim. A scholar comes to America. A scholar's book is translated. A scholar's on a telelink. Everyone has to learn from the scholar, benefit from the scholar, take from the scholar. The scholars are the warathatul anbiya. And then tomorrow or next month or next year, you say, what happened to Sheikh Fulan? I need a new copy of his book. I'll say, no, he's been refuted. We don't take from him anymore. You say, what happened? The scholar changed my life. I benefit from him. I love it. No, we don't take him no more. Get rid of his books. But the book that he wrote when he was upon, the truth. They say, you still got to burn it. You still got to get rid of it. It's of no use anymore. Well, maybe this is the only book on the subject. They say, you still got to burn it. You can't read it anymore. Okay, no problem. Cool. 2 years go by. Another scholar comes to America. The masjid is full, it's packed. Respect the scholars, listen to the scholars, obey the scholars. You have to be with the understanding of the scholars, no problem. And then something happens mysteriously. This scholar differs with another one, and then they play the same game again. This scholar is no longer good anymore. You can't take anything from him. But I thought he was a scholar. How is he so knowledgeable? Now he's ignorant of these basic principles. No, he's attacking the companions now. He's talking about Allah's attributes. He's refuted. Nah, don't take from him. Okay, no problem. And then it happens a third time. Then the brother, he graduates and he comes and he teaches and he benefits and lifts and upraises the people. And then the same thing happens over and over and over and over again. There's no doubt that the layman Muslim is going to say, you know what? I can't play this game anymore. It's a roller coaster. He's a scholar, then he's ignorant. He's the greatest scholar, then he's a kadhab, then he's a dajjal, then he's this, then he's that. I don't want to have anything to do with what? Any scholars. I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. He sounds just like the last one. He looks just like the last one. He taught the same books that the same one taught is going to happen again. So you know what? I don't want to learn from any scholars. And then you ask yourself about the people that you know personally. This brother is the representative of this sheikh in America? You know, you got to be joking. I just saw them doing this. Or his ex-wife this and this and this. No, there's no way that he can be the representative of Sheikh Fulan in America. How can this, and I don't want to say no names, and I'm not here for a food fight. I'm not here to disrespect anyone. But I'm trying to prove a point. We all know Brother Fulan personally. Personally. We know Brother Fulan has a nightlife. We know Brother Fulan has a major problem, a major issue. May Allah help him with that. Just like we all have problems, but we all know. He's the representative of Sheikh Fulan in the whole entire West. This one here, another. Leave off the problems and the sins. Where did you study? Did you ever study anywhere formally? Have you ever been formally trained under a true scholar or scholars? I studied this book. I studied Abwab Minha, Abwab Minha, Abwab Minha, Abwab Minha. I studied chapters of this book, chapters of that book. What books did you study, Yahi? That's my question. I don't want to know what books you skimmed through. Where did you actually formally train and study? He can't answer. And he is the deputy of this sheikh in this country. So you as a layman Muslim, not a scholar, not a student of knowledge, you're going to say, wait, this has to be a joke. How can the sheikh appoint him to be his representative? And we all know what he doesn't have. So there has to be something wrong with Sheikh Fulan. Either he's ignorant, he's heedless, he's too old, he's senile, or he himself is upon the way of this guy whom we know personally in Philadelphia or any other place. So therefore the layman Muslim is the one that's going to eventually lose trust, lose respect, lose regard for the scholars. And it's not because of this one and that one and this one and that one, but it's because of what? You. They said, you brought Ammar to us, we had to fight him on the battlefield. So oftentimes the shaitan is very subtle. He's very subtle. He plays a game. And the game is played so well that the one who's on the attack doesn't realize that he's being played. And you don't have respect for scholars. Sheikh Fulan different with Sheikh Alan. No problem. He refuted him. But isn't he still a what? Isn't he still a scholar? No. He's a kadhab. Don't call him by his first name. He's evil. He's this. He's that. So on and so forth. But I thought he was still a what? A scholar. So the lack of respect has been caused for the scholars, not by us. But in actuality, it's been caused by what? But you. And if you think this is an extreme, or you think this is an exaggeration, then just look at one thing that does not lie. And that thing is called history. Don't take this from me. Look over the last 25 years. Am I making this up? This has happened. So therefore, we need to be mindful of that. Inshallah ta'ala. Tayyib, with that being said, what I'm going to discuss with ta'ala tonight is one of the most widespread doubts. Or not even a doubt. Maybe it's a proof and evidence that we are upon a deviant way. But we want to discuss this, inshallah, briefly. And that is the issue of those who say that you can't take from people who have made mistakes. Or you can't take from people of bid'ah, of innovations. It was never from the way of the Salaf and the ulama to take from the people of innovations. Why can't I study with Ali Davis? It says because he's with the people of innovations. That's point number one. Point number two is we can't take from the what? The people of innovations. Some years back, I gave a lecture. I believe it was in Parsippany, New Jersey, at the Masjid Rafa conference. And that was one of the things that caused a major uproar. And that was discussing the concept of ilm al-hadith, the sciences of hadith. And what applies and what doesn't apply, what the ulama used to do and what they didn't used to do. In that lecture, no matter what I said, whether I was wrong or right, that's what I said. And from the points that came up in that lecture, and from the things that were brought up and refuted against that lecture, they said that you can't say that the science of ilm al-jarh wa ta'deel and ar-rad ala al-mukhalif, you can't say that they're different. They're the same science. The science of grading narrators of hadith, accepting, rejecting hadiths, and refuting someone, even if they're from the sunnah, they said that those sciences are what? Same rules. And I humbly said that they're what? They aren't the same rules. Are there consistencies? Yes, there are. Are there similarities and parallels? Yes, there are. But to say that this science and refuting someone and talking about someone is the exact same, I said, no, I don't believe this. And to this day, I still believe that's wrong. However, what I'm going to discuss right now, Bid'inai Ta'ala, briefly, because we don't get into these issues in front of the layman people, as I mentioned back then. But since it's come up, we're going to bring it up. I'm going to read something pertaining to the sciences of hadith and pertaining to narrators who are innovators, well-known innovators, who practice bid'ah, who implemented bid'ah, who called to bid'ah. And let's see what the ulama, Imam Ahmad, this one and that one, let's see what they actually said about those people. And did they learn from them and did they take from them? Does this mean that I'm claiming or I'm attempting to get the people to take from the people of innovations? It does not mean that. Does this mean that we believe that bid'ah is okay? It does not mean that. Does this mean that it's all right, do whatever you want to do? It does not mean that, but we're trying to prove a scientific point here. And we're trying to show you is that these claims, they themselves do not have the ability to back them up and support them 100% scientifically. As far as getting on the phone, Sheikh Fulan, there's a student of knowledge, there's a brother, there's hunaka wahid, hunaka rajulun, there's a man. They have the ability to do that. But scholastically prove their points one by one, that's something that they can't do. And the proof for that, once more, is history. They talk about someone, they pick on someone, they bully someone. The moment you speak back about them and you defend yourself and prove their mistakes, then they say, oh, you're slandering the brothers, you're attacking the brothers. Why is he talking about the people? Or they bring up another issue. These are the points that you said about me. These are the points I want you to prove. Once you make that speech, then, oh, it's a different issue now. It's a reality. So let's see. Number one, have you been lied to? Number two, have you been taught? Has knowledge been given to you by someone who is thoroughly scholastic in what they're saying pertaining to this one issue? And only this what? Only this one issue. The famous book, Sharh al-Tirmidhi, which I'm sure everyone has in their library, anyone who's a self-respecting student of hadith. In the first volume, in the 53rd page, the author, Al-Hafidh ibn Rajab, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, مسألة في رواية المبتدع وهذه المسألة قد اختلف العلماء فيها قديما وحديثا وهي الرواية عن أهل الأهواء والبدع. He says this issue here, the issue of narrating, taking hadiths, learning and studying from someone who is an innovator, someone who's a person of innovations, let alone a student of knowledge or a scholar whose creed is well known, but he supposedly made a mistake or two or three. No, someone who's a person of innovations. Is it permissible to take hadith from them or not? And don't forget, guys, please don't forget the rule, is that refuting someone and the sciences of jarh wa ta'deel, they said they're what? They say they're the same. They say that they're what? They're the exact same. So therefore, that which applies to the sciences of the hadith has to also apply to what? The sciences of what? Of refuting someone. And if they don't, if there's an exception to the rule, then that means there's a game of contradiction. I can say whatever I want to say and take whatever I want to take, and then you can't. Everyone understand this or not? Once more, ar-rad ala al-mukhalif, refuting someone, whoever that person is, which we don't differ on. And we don't disbelieve in that. We believe that a mistake should be refuted. And a mistake should be warned from. How? When? How is that mistake? And what is actually a mistake? That's the thing which we differ. But we do not differ on the fact that a mistake is to be rejected no matter who says it. No matter who says it. Everyone understand this? So therefore, refuting someone and narrating from someone, according to them, has the what? Has the same rule. Tayyib. So Ibn Rajab, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, this issue here, the issue of narrating from the people of innovations, Ahlul Bid'ah, Ahlul Ahwa, he says that the ulama, not the Sufis, not these, not the Khawarij, the ulama, he says they've differed over this issue, qadiman wa hadithan. He says of past and of present. And he lived in the 8th century. He lived in the 8th century. Today they say there's no difference of opinion on this issue, akhi. If you read this, if you say this, they say you have shubuhat, they're doubts. There's no difference of opinion that we don't take nothing from Ahlul Bid'ah. You've heard this before or not, Jabir? He's saying he lived in the 8th century, that the scholars have done what? They've differed over when? Qadiman, in the past, and also what? In the present. And this book is talking about the sciences of what? Of hadith, which are the same as the sciences of what? Refute someone, criticize someone. So before we go any further, there's difference of opinion. Are we using the difference of opinion as our dalil? No. Are we trying to say that it's okay and right? No. But we're trying to prove a point that you have to fall under one of the following scenarios. Number one, you're ignorant. Number two, you're a liar. Number three, you hide that which is against you and you mention that which is for you. And all three of them are thrown out the window at the end of the day in actual scientific discussion. So he says that the ulama, they have differed over this issue in the past and in the present. كما ذكره قال فمنع طائفة من الرواية عنهم كما ذكره ابن سيرين وحكي نحوه عن مالك وابن عيينة والحميدي ويونس بن أبي إسحاق وعلي بن حرب وغيرهم وروى أبو إسحاق الفزاري عن زائدة عن هشام عن الحسن أنه قال لا تسمعوا من أهل الأهواء خرجه ابن أبي حاتم. He says, so the first opinion, the first view is that of one group of scholars who say that you can't take no hadiths from the people of innovations. Even though they're hadith scholars, don't listen to them, don't take any narrations from them. Clear. Don't listen to them, don't do what? Take anything from them. It's the first group. He says, and this is the view of Ibn Sirin, of Imam Malik, Ibn Uyayna, Humaydi, and many, many others. Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he said, do not listen to the people of desires. Don't take any hadith from them. Clear. وَرَخَّصَتْ طَائِفَةٌ فِي الرِّوَايَةِ عَنْهُمْ إِذَا لَمْ يُتَّهَمُوا بِالْكَذِبِ منهم أبو حنيفة والشافعي ويحيى بن سعيد وعلي بن المديني وقال ابن المديني لو تركت أهل البصرة للقدر وتركت أهل الكوفة للتشيع لخربت الكتب. The second view is the view of those who say you should take hadiths from them as long as they aren't liars, as long as they're truthful, as long as they're honest, and of course as long as they're qualified. Take hadiths from them. He says, and this was the view of Imam Abu Hanifa, the view of Imam Shafi'i, the view of Imam Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, who was the teacher of Imam Ahmad, the view of Ali ibn al-Madini, the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari. These are heavy hitters now. He says this was their view. And Ibn al-Madini, he went to the extreme by saying, listen carefully, we want to make the translation word for word. He says, لَوْ تَرَكْتُ أَهْلَ الْبَصْرَةِ لِلْقَدَرِ. He says, if I were to go towards the people of Basra, that thriving city in Iraq, which is one of the major centers of hadith. He says, if I left them alone, if I didn't take hadith from them, because of the bid'ah of qadr, those who say that there's no qadr, qadriya. Everything happens, Allah doesn't know what's going to happen. He says, if I abandon them because of that bid'ah, وَتَرَكْتُ, he says, and if I left off the people of Kufa, another thriving city in Iraq, if I abandoned them because they were Shia, Ali is better, Uthman, he did wrong, Uthman made mistakes, so on and so forth. He says, if I abandon them, لَخَرِبَتِ الْكُتُبِ. He says, then the books would become naked. The books would be skinny. There would be no names, what? In the books, meaning that so many narrators were what? People of bid'ah. They had innovations with them. Rejecting and denying the qadr. Talking about the qadr. Is that not a bid'ah? Without a question. Speaking about the Sahaba. Slandering some of them. Giving virtue to Uthman over others. So is that not a bid'ah? And he says, if I left them alone, then what? He said, there'd be no what? There'd be no books. I.e., Ali ibn al-Madini is saying, is a necessity to take from these individuals. And if I didn't take from them, then much knowledge will be lost. Let's move forward to the next page. He says, وَفَرَّقَتْ طَائِفَةٌ أُخْرَى بَيْنَ الدَّاعِيَةِ وَغَيْرِهِ فَمَنْعُ الرِّوَايَةَ عَنِ الدَّاعِيَةِ إِلَى الْبِدْعَةِ دُونَ غَيْرِهِ مِنْهُمْ ابن مبارك وابن مهدي وأحمد بن حنبل ويحيى بن معين وروي أيضا عن مالك. He says, in a third group, a third opinion, is that of those who say that there's a difference between the caller to bid'ah and between the follower of bid'ah, a tag-along. One who didn't make up the innovation. He's not calling to it. He's just a person of innovations. That's what he's upon. This group, they say that there's a difference between the two. If it's a caller, don't take hadith from him. If it's a follower, then do what? Take hadith from them. He says, and this is the view of Imam Ibn al-Mubarak, and also the view of Imam Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, another teacher of Imam Ahmad, and the view of Imam Ahmad himself, and the view of Imam Yahya ibn Ma'in, and it's also been narrated from Imam Malik. وَالْمَانِعُونَ مِنَ الرِّوَايَةِ لَهُمْ مَأْخَذَانِ. He says, and those who say that you can't take hadith from them, there are two reasons why they say this. Two reasons. Number one, أحدهما تكفير أهل الأهواء أو تفسيقهم وفيه خلاف مشهور. He says, first and foremost, is that the people of innovations are one or two types. They're either kuffar or they're either fusaq. They're either no longer Muslim or for sure they're sinners. And obviously knowledge is not to be taken from someone who's a kafir or who's a sinner. Everyone understand this? Knowledge is not to be taken from someone who's a kafir or someone who's a what? A sinner. That's the first reason I say don't take anything from Ahlul Bid'ah. Number two, before number two, he says, وَفِيهِ خِلَافٌ مَشْهُورٌ. He says, and it's a well-known discussion and difference of opinion among the ulama. Once more, it's not ijma'. The second point, he says, وَالثَّانِي الْإِهَانَةُ لَهُمْ وَالْهُجْرَانُ وَالْعُقُوبَةُ بِتَرْكِ الرِّوَايَةِ عَنْهُمْ وَإِنْ لَمْ نَحْكُمْ بِكُفْرِهِمْ أَوْ فِسْقِهِمْ. He says the second reason is that we are to boycott them and to humiliate them and to leave off taking hadith from them, even if we don't deem them to be kuffar and even if we don't deem them to be sinners. Listen carefully. He says if we what? If we don't deem them to be fusaq, but we shouldn't take hadith from them. That's their punishment. No one wants to take knowledge from you. وَلَهُمْ مَأْخُذٌ ثَالِثٌ وَهُوَ أَنَّ الْهَوَى وَالْبِدْعَةَ لَا يُؤْمَنُ مَعَهُ الْكَذِبُ وَلَا سِيمَا إِذَا كَانَتِ الرِّوَايَةُ مِمَّا تَعْضُدُ هَوَى الرَّاوِي. He says here, and they have a third point. They have a third point. And that is a person of innovations and desires who can say that we can actually trust him. Maybe he'll narrate a hadith to support his cause. So this is why they say we can't take no hadiths from them. This is the science of hadith. This is, they say what? We don't take no hadiths from them. Moving forward. He then quotes some other athar regarding not to take hadith from these types of people, as we've just explained. As we've what? Just explains. He says, وَقَالَ عَلِيُّ بْنُ حَرْبٍ مَنْ قَدْرَ أَنْ لَا يَكْتُبُ الْحَدِيثَ إِلَّا عَنْ صَاحِبِ سُنَّةٍ فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يَكْذِبُونَ كُلُّ صَاحِبِ هَوًى يَكْذِبُ وَلَا يُبَالِي وَلَا هَذَا الْمَأْخَذِ فَقَدْ يُسْتَثْنَى مَنْ اشْتَهَرَ بِالصِّدْقِ وَالْعِلْمِ كما قال أبو داود ليس في أهل الأهواء أصح حديثا من الخوارج. ثم ذكر عمران بن حطان وأبا حسن الأعرج أو أبا حسان الأعرج. وأما الرافضة فبالعكس قال يزيد بن هارون لا يكتب عن الرافضة فإنهم يكذبون خرجه من أبي حاتم. ومنهم من فرق بين من يغلو في هواه ومن لا يغلو كما ترك ابن خزينة حديث عباد بن يعقوب لغلوه. والسئل ابن الأخرم لما ترك البخاري حديث بالطفيل قال لأنه كان يفرط في التشيع. وقريب من هذا قول من فرق بين البدع المغلظة كالتجهم والرفض والخارجية والقدر والبدع المخففة ذات الشبه كالإرجاء. قال أحمد في رواية أبو داود احتملوا من المرجئة الحديث ويكتب عن القدر إذا لم يكن داعية. وقال المروزي كان أبو عبد الله يحدث عن المرجئ إذا لم يكن داعيا ولم نقف له على نص في الجهم أنه يروي عنه إذا لم يكن داعيا بل كلامه فيه عام أنه لا يروى عنه. He says, the author then says, is that these are the reasons why they don't want to take hadith from Ahlul Bid'ah. He says, but perhaps there is an exception to those who are famous for being truthful and those who are famous for actually being skilled. One may make an exception to those who are well known of being true hadith masters, and they don't lie, and they don't make up things, and they don't try to support their agenda, and they don't try to make propaganda in the narrations that they narrate. Right now we're speaking about an innovator. We're not talking about an alim, a scholar, a student of knowledge who may have made a mistake, maybe, or he did something that was wrong, and which they say you can't what? You can't take what? Anything from them. And he's talking about a person of who? Sunnah. He said a person of what? Bid'ah. Who is known for being truthful, and he's known for being what? Having actual ilm. So before we move forward, no matter what happens, no matter what we read, something is definitely fishy. They haven't given you the entire story all of these years. They haven't given you everything that the ulama have said all of these years. They've given you a piece and a slice, and they've hid from you much. Why would they hide? Did they not read the next page? They did not hear the book? They did not know of Ibn Rajab? They did not know of these athar? No, they knew of them, but it's about what? Control. He's not with us. So we have to slander him and assassinate him. And get the people not to sit with him, not to study with him, because he's against our agenda for money, for power, for control, for women, for jealousy, or for any other base worldly reason. For any other what? Base worldly reason. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, Imam Abu Dawood rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, you'll never find a people from the people of innovations who have a more authentic hadith than the Khawarij. He says you'll never find a people who have more truth in their hadith than who? Khawarij, and they're from Ahlul Bid'ah. There's no question about that. He says you'll never find those who are more truthful than them. Because lying is a major sin, and major sin to the Khawarij is Kufr Akbar. So they don't lie. They don't what? They don't lie. He says, and then Abu Dawood, he mentioned a man whose name was Imran ibn Hattan. Who was Imran ibn Hattan? Anyone know who he was? Anybody ever heard of this man's name? Imran ibn Hattan? He was the man who praised the murderer of Abdurrahman ibn Muljim. You know, who praised Abdurrahman ibn Muljim. You know what Abdurrahman ibn Muljim was? He was the one who killed Uthman. He was the one that made the final blow on Uthman, who was an old man reading the Quran. The companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he killed him. And this man, Imran ibn Hattan, he wrote poetry about him, praising his act. Innovator or not? Huh? And his hadith is, he says, is truthful. Where is this man's hadith collected? Take a guess where you can find his name. Not Abu Dawood, no. Sahih Bukhari. Everybody understand the point we're trying to get to? We're trying to say that Sahih Bukhari, no. We're trying to make a point. Is that there's something that's wrong. Something hasn't been, you weren't given the entire story. Something is seriously wrong. You can never from someone from the Khawarij, or who praised someone who killed Uthman, but we don't take from him because he praised this one, and he said this about that one, and he went here and he did this. Something doesn't add up in front of the scientific dalil. That's the only point that we're trying to make. Everyone understand this? That's the what? That's the only point that we're trying to make. Moving forward, he says here, speaking about the Rafidah, the extreme Shia, he says they lie, so we don't take from them. And then he says, and then there are those who made another difference between those who were extreme and those who weren't extreme. Tayyib. And then he says, this is the back-breaking point here, he says that Imam Ahmad said, take hadith from the Murji'ah. He says, ihtamilu hadith, learn from them. The Murji'ah are those who practice the bid'ah of what? Of irja'. Those who say that Iman may not fluctuate. Or those who say that Iman is just a statement and a belief and it's not actual what? Action. Bid'ah or not. Imam Ahmad, he said what? Take hadith from them. He then says, وَيُكْتَبُ عَنِ الْقَدْرِ. And a Qadri, a person of bid'ah of Qadr, he says, يُكْتَبُ عَنْهُ. Their hadith should be what? Written down and taken. As long as he isn't a caller to that what? That innovation. So, let's ask ourselves the question. What bid'ah did this brother in the city of Philadelphia do? What bid'ah did I make? What bid'ah did I perform? If I ask the question. Tayyib, but you made a mistake. Back to the what? The paper. You made a mistake. You said this about the scholars. You do this, so on and so on and so forth. Okay, no problem. Maybe I did, or maybe he did. No problem. But am I a mubtadi'? Am I an innovator? They're going to say, no, you're not an innovator. They'll say behind your back because they know that they'll fall into another pitfall. And that is making tabdi' on someone without the proper qualifications. And they themselves taught us that this is the duty of the who? The scholars. So we can't precede you in saying that. But we do believe you're an innovator, but we're just too scared to what? To say it. When I see you in the streets, I don't give you salams. Your name is mentioned, I have no love for him. He's not my brother. So on and so forth. We don't benefit. You're treating me like an innovator, but you're just too cowardly to do what? To say that I'm in. So, but if I was an innovator, based on what we just read, it would be permissible to do what? As long as this, with the conditions. Everyone understand the point? According to those ulama, and that's not consensus. That's only some of the ulama. But the point is that that black and white picture that's being painted and stuffed down your throats is not scientific. It's not true. It's not what? It's not true. And this is not my speech. Go back to the book and you can refer to the reference if you don't believe me. Let's move forward. Let's move on to another book, Bidnai subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regards to this issue. Because one may say, well, that's just Imam Ibn Rajab. Okay, that's not the rest of the ulama. Now we're going to read from a book called Mizan al-I'tidal fi Naqd al-Rijal. A book that was written specifically about anyone who was criticized by Al-Hafidh al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah. And some may not even call him Imam al-Dhahabi because al-Dhahabi had mistakes. There were mistakes in Aqidah that he made. FYI. There were errors that al-Dhahabi, Allah have mercy upon him, he actually what? He made. And some of the ulama and mashayikh of Medina, they would correct us. When we read in the classroom, said, Qala al-Imam, they said, don't say Imam, say Hafidh. There's no doubt he was a Hafidh, but an Imam, it says someone that was clean, a clean slate. And al-Dhahabi had issues in Aqidah. This is not from Muhammad ibn Munir. I'm not making this up. I'm not slandering al-Dhahabi. I'm doing nothing but stating what? Facts. Take it if you want, don't take it if you don't want to. Tayyib. Al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he wrote a book about men who are criticized, whether they were criticized justly or unjustly. So we're talking about the sciences of what? Hadith, which are the same as refuting someone, according to what they said. He says, Abad ibn Yaqub, Kha Ta Qaf, Al-Asadi, Al-Rawajini, Al-Kufi, min ghulat al-Shi'a, wa ru'us al-bid'ah, lakinnahu sadiqun fil hadith. He says that this man, this narrator's name is Abad, the son of Yaqub. And then there's brackets, and he mentions 3 letters. Kha, Ta, Qaf, which are abbreviations for 3 books. Meaning that this man, Abad, his narrations can be found in the following 3 books of Hadith. The book of Imam Kha, who is who? Bukhari. Ta, Tirmidhi. Qaf, Ibn Majah, Al-Qazwini. Everyone understand this? He says he is Al-Asadi, Al-Rawajini, Al-Kufi. He mentioned his lineage and his background. And then he says about him, Min ghulat al-Shi'a. He says he's an extreme Shiite. He's not a fihi tashayyud. He says he's what? Min ghulat. He's a what? Extreme what? Shia. Wa ru'us al-bid'ah. And he's from the heads of innovations. Not innovation. He says bid'ah. Without a term about innovations. So, he's a Shiite. He's an extreme Shiite. And he's from the heads of what? Of bid'ah. Should we take from him? Should we learn from him? Can we listen to him? Can we benefit from him? He's the only one who wrote a book on the topic. He's the most qualified person in this city, in this country, in this Western Hemisphere. He studied for all of these years. Don't take anything from him because he made a mistake. Because he sat with this one, because he went here, because he didn't visit this sheikh, and so on and so forth. He says that this man is ghulat. He's from the ghulat, extreme Shiite. And he's from the heads, meaning he's a what? A caller. What does al-Dhahabi say about him next? لَكِنَّهُ صَادِقٌ fil hadith. He says he's a truthful narrator of hadith. I.e., it's okay to take from him. And his hadith was mentioned where? Which is supposed to be the most authentic book after the Quran. Something doesn't add up right now. Something is not right with what people say. Something doesn't make sense. And I'm not just talking about students of knowledge. Something isn't right. And something has not been told to you all of these years. Moving forward, Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, عن شريك والوليد بن أبي ثور وخلق وعنه البخاري حديث في الصحيح مقرونا بآخر والترمذي وابن ماجه وابن خزيمة وابن أبي داود وقال أبو حاتم شيخ ثقة وقال ابن خزيمة حدثنا الثقة في روايته المتهم في دينه عباد. He then goes on to mention how was hadith in Sahih Bukhari, that he paired him with another narrator. He didn't depend upon him 100%. He didn't depend upon him what? 100%. But his name is mentioned where? What? That's the bottom line. And what we were taught is that his name has to be crossed out with a red marker. His name just being in Sahih Bukhari. Imam Bukhari didn't notice about him, but he mentioned his name. However, he says, listen to this. And this is going to break their backs now. Ibn Khuzaymah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Ibn Khuzaymah is the Imam of the Sunnah. They call him Shaykh al-Islam. He was from the greatest of the greats of his times. He said, حَدَّثَنَا الثِّقَةُ فِي رِوَايَتِهِ. He says, the trustworthy one has narrated to us. meaning he's trustworthy in his narration of hadith. Al-muttahamu fi dinihi. But his deen, his practice, his bid'ah, he's what? Muttaham. We don't trust him. So this, I don't think what could become clearer than this. His ilm, his knowledge, he's what? Trustworthy. His deen, his practice, he said he's what? Not trustworthy. And he took what? Hadith from him. So this is an innovator. Have you ever heard someone in the city of Philadelphia slandering the companions? Cursing the companions? Did you ever hear anybody, any of us, saying that Abu Bakr and Umar are in the fire? He who doesn't love Ali, Hassan and Hussein, doesn't love this one and that. Have you ever heard anybody slandering any Sahaba like that? Has anyone ever called to innovation? We didn't say he didn't make a mistake, or he shouldn't have said this, or he shouldn't have went there. Maybe, for argument's sake. Have you ever heard any of them? Ever? Jabir. So they're saying that he's trustworthy in his riwayah, and he's untrustworthy, he's shaky in his what? In his deen. But he still did what? He took from him. Moving forward, he then says, وروى عبدان الأهوازي عن الثقة أن عباد بن يعقوب كان يشتم السلف وقال ابن عدي روى أحاديث في الفضائل أنكرت عليه وقال الصالح جزرة كان عباد بن يعقوب يشتم عثمان وسمعته يقول الله أعدل من أن يدخل طلحة والزبير الجنة وقاتل عليا بعد أن بايعاه. وقال القاسم ابن زكريا المطرز دخلت على عباد بن يعقوب وكان يمتحن من سمع إلى آخره. And then he goes on to mention how this man used to slander Uthman and speak ill of Uthman. And he said, how can Talha and Zubayr be in paradise and they fought Ali after they gave him the Pledge of Allegiance? He says the law is more just than that. For these people to be treacherous and then to go to Jannah. He slandered the Sahaba. And they said that he was what? Trustworthy and he was honest. Let's mention another example. Bid'ah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This example, let's see. Let's say maybe volume 1. Bid'ah ta'ala. Of Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah. With regards to that which was said pertaining to taking ilm and taking knowledge from the people of innovations. And that we don't take anyone from anyone who makes a mistake or who isn't clear, let alone if a person is actually from the people of innovations, etc. Tayyib. Volume 1. Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Aban ibn Taghlib, Mim Ain Waw, or Aw, Al-Kufi, Shi'iyun Jaldun, Lakinnahu Sadukun, فلنا صدقه وعليه بدعته وقد وثقه أحمد بن حنبل وابن معين وابو حاتم وأورده ابن عدي وقال كان غاليا في التشيع وقال السعدي زائغ مجاهر فلقائل أن يقول كيف ساق توثيق مبتدع وحد الثقة العدالة والإتقان فكيف يكون عدلا من هو صاحب بدعة وجوابه أن البدعة على ضربين فبدعة صغرى كغلو التشيع أو كالتشيع بلا غلو ولا تحرف فهذا كثير في التابعين وتابعيهم مع الدين والورع والصدق فلو رد حديث هؤلاء لذهب جملة من الآثار النبوية وهذه مفسدة بينة ثم بدعة كبرى كالرفض الكامل والغلو فيه والحط على أبي بكر وعمر رضي الله عنهما والدعاء إلى ذلك فهذا النوع لا يحتج بهم ولا كرامة وأيضا إلى آخر كلامه رحمه الله تعالى. The next narrator's name is Aban ibn Taghlib, and he gives more initials for his name. And the first initial he gives is Mim, which means his narrations can be found where? Sahih Muslim. After Sahih what? Al-Bukhari. This man Aban ibn Taghlib, he says he's Kufi. He's from Kufa, Iraq. And the first thing he says about him, he says, Shi'iyun Jald. He says he's a stark Shiite. Jaldun. Not he's a little Shiite, he's a mini Shiite, he's a diet Shiite. He says what? Jaldun. He's a pure, hardcore what? Shiite. Lakinnahu saduqun. However, he is what? He's truthful. So what do we do if he's truthful but he's an innovator? فَلَنَا صِدْقُهُ وَعَلَيْهِ بِدْعَتُهُ. Listen to what Dhahabi says. He says, so we get and we take from his truthfulness, and upon him is his what? his bid'ah. If someone said this today in 2018, they say, Ya Ikhwani, Ya Mumayyir, Ya Mutasattir, Ya Mutalawin. They'll give you a list of names if you said that exact sentence. I'm going to take the good from them, and I'm going to leave off the supposed bad. Because you still haven't proved the bad of this individual. You haven't proved that yet scientifically, all of these years. You haven't proved it. You've made accusations, you've slandered, he went here, you went there, but that's not the actual sharr of a person. If a person goes to a conference, that's not Salafi, quote unquote. That's not the evil of an individual. What does that conference have to do with you? Were you there at the conference? Did he mislead somebody at that conference? He went to the conference and he was there, Khalas. Now he's back in Philadelphia teaching his class and he's giving you the Quran and the Sunnah. What is the sharr in that? We're not talking about the ruling of going to the conference. That's a different issue. We're not getting into that right now. But they say this is a point against him. What point is against him if the rules of refuting someone and the rules of the hadith and the narrator's hadith are the what? And the Dhahabi says he's truthful, so we kid his truth and you take his what? His bid'ah. You've been lied to. All of these years, they've told you half of the story. They've misconstrued the information. And whoever says this, that the science of al-jarh wa ta'dil and al-rad al-mukhalif are the exact same, between me and him, are what? Are these books. And there's only 2 books that we mention. One book of hadith, narrators can have thousands of names. We only mention a few individuals and a few statements from those ulama. Al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says about this individual that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said that he was thiqah, he was trustworthy. Ibn Ma'in said he was thiqah. Abu Hatim said he was thiqah. And Ibn Adi, he said about him, kana ghaliyan fi at-tashayyu', is that he was an extreme Shiite. And all of these imams, they both said about him that he was what? That he was trustworthy. Now, I don't want to go on and drag it out too much. It's getting late. I believe, in my humble opinion, is that the point is crystal clear. And the point is not to call to innovations, sit with the people of innovations. No, that's not the point. Because that's what some idiotic person is going to come and say. Some idiotic, immature person is going to say, look, he's spreading doubts. He's trying to get the people to sit with innovations. No. We're trying to move me. One point only. Is that if the ulama of hadith narrated from innovators, then why can't we take knowledge from someone who made a mistake? Or who did something wrong? Or who made a bad statement? Allah Azza wa Jal in this lecture, khadarahu, he was forsaken. He said something that was wrong and he was forsaken. He said because he didn't recant it. He didn't take it back. Okay, him not recanting a statement that was bad, whose responsibility is that? Is that yours or that between him and Allah Azza wa Jal? I understand it. So this is something which is only a small drop from a torrential storm. If we were to go and dig into these books and read these books and actually read what the ulama of hadith said and did, you will find it very contrast to your orthodox Salafiyah in the city of Philadelphia, of those who say you can't do this, you can't go here, you can't listen to him, this is what the scholars say, and the list goes on. So this is nothing more than an example. And this is nothing more than a simple point that we're trying to prove the hypocrisy and the contradiction and the lack of thorough ilm that these people are propagating and pushing, and they've been propagating and pushing for the last 20 and 25 years. And this is one of the most important points why they hate individuals with degrees. And they hate people that have studied for a long time because they know it's not 2-year Arabic program. They know it's no longer, you go overseas, you come back and you just read and translate. No. I have learnt, I was taught by the ulama to do research, to investigate, and to think for myself. And that's why a doctor's degree doesn't mean anything. That's why a master's degree doesn't mean anything. And as we said many years ago, if it didn't mean anything, and if it was no importance, then why do those ulama all have what? So it's something seriously wrong. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to heal us all and to protect us all from the evils of our souls. Once more, as a final disclaimer, my talk tonight was not about anyone specific. If you feel that it was addressed to you, and if the shoe fits, then that's your issue. It is whoever falls into this. And that's the issue of abusing the speech of the people of knowledge. Lying, cutting a sentence in half, misconstruing, and only giving half of the story. We mentioned to you clearly is that some ulama said they do what? Don't what? Don't take what? Nothing from them. Did we not mention that or not? We mentioned that. And if this was my agenda, then that would be against what? Don't be against me, but I did what? I mentioned it. And I gave my source. So, bid'inat ta'ala, if you have the ability to mention your sources, mention your proofs and evidences, and it's salimun min al-ma'arada, there's no other narrations. If Imam Ahmad didn't take from this one, then we have a statement, as he just mentioned, that he took from that one. So at the end of the day, the worst of the worst is that it's an issue of ijtihad. You say don't go to this conference, and I say go to the conference. You have your proof and evidence. You have your ulama that you called. I have my proof and evidence. I have the ulama, I have those who said this and said that. What's the problem? Unless there's what? Something else. Everyone understand this? But if it was based off of sincerity and actual ilm, it wouldn't be the way it is now. Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. We ask Him for beneficial knowledge and righteous action. We ask Him to forgive us of our sins and overlook our shortcomings and our faults. We ask Him to guide us to the straight path and keep us firm upon that path until the day in which we meet Him. Wa sallallahu sallam wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina wa imamina Muhammad. Those brothers who wish to leave, they can do so without any shyness or fear. If anyone wishes to comment or add anything, or if there are any questions or things that are unclear from the basic, simple speech that we gave, I don't mind entertaining some of them and taking some of them. And Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. طيب